We're talking about last year's insurrection. National security expert Peter Bergen says the January 6th insurrection was both a peak, of his words, a contemporary American white form of nationalism and a dress rehearsal for what will likely come next. Congressman Dean Phillips, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Paul and Jordana.
I know you're a little busy out east. You got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of plates spinning in the air, but we sure appreciate your time and your perspective. And my first question for you, Congressman, the immediate attack on the U.S. Capitol has passed, but the question I have that a lot of people have is representative democracy in the United States still under attack?
It is. I would be remiss if I didn't concur. And I also have to remind everybody listening that the solution is not necessarily in state houses or the U.S. Congress or even the White House. The solution is in every community and neighborhood across the country. Democracy relies on the will of the people, and it is a blessing that we live in a country that has endured now for over 200 years with peaceful transitions of power until, of course, 2021. And that is why we're speaking today. But I'm concerned. I'd be foolish if I wasn't, but I'm also optimistic because I do believe the better angels in America are out there. We simply need to engage them, to invite them, and remind them of the responsibility of living in such a remarkable country at such an important time.
Dean, I so appreciate your optimism, and I'm grateful that you still have it, because as I was watching the memorials today and I was watching the speeches, and we played your sound from a year ago, a few days after the insurrection, we talked with you on the air, and it was chilling to hear you describe how you guys were hiding and then trying to go over to the Republican side of Congress, thinking that they were going to come hunting for you as a Democrat. I mean, just that. It saddens me. It terrifies me. And we're watching it from afar, but you are at the Capitol. So tell us, what is happening there today? What is the feel like, the vibe like? And do you think we will ever find the truth and have accountability for this terrible act?
You know, I have to say, Jordana, the vibe is actually remarkably hopeful today. Usually we would have 535 members of Congress and full offices and a large cohort of staff, both in the Capitol and in the office buildings. But between COVID, the fact that Congress is not in session right now, there are just a very few handful of us here that came back to Washington to commemorate the day. I'm part of a group of 25. We call ourselves the Gallery Group, 25 of us who were trapped in the House chamber for about 20 minutes, some longer, on January 6th. And we've become a very closely knit, a very politically diverse, geographically and even racially diverse group, but knit by the events of that day. And they've been extraordinary friends and colleagues. And we're all here together. And we felt that the best way to commemorate the day was through gratitude. And we engaged Jose Andreas's World Central Kitchen and served 700 lunches to U.S. Capitol police officers and Capitol staff today, just to say thank you. We felt the best way to bring about some repair and healing was gratitude, and made that our mission. And so the tone here is actually one of hopefulness, solemnity, of course, but also optimism that the better angels in the country are going to rise. And I hope some of them serve in the Congress. You know, Jordana, one of my gravest disappointments so far since my career began in 2019 is the erosion and dissipation of the unity that I felt in very fleeting moments 1 year ago today, when all of us escaped to a safe room where we had tens of my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, in the same room who had experienced the same events together. And I have to tell you, it was remarkable how unified it seemed. Everybody resolute to get back in the chamber and fulfill our mission, which we did at about 1 a.m, and equally resolute to hold those to account who clearly incited, enabled, and created the dynamics that led to the insurrection. And the fact that so many of those people now have remained silent, while only two in particular, Adam Kinzinger, of course, and Liz Cheney, have remained just as intentional is disappointing and frankly dangerous. And that's a reminder of the gravity and the consequences of ignorance. And, I have to remind everybody, democracy is not inevitable. It's not inevitable. It doesn't happen by chance. And we have to tend to it. We have to cultivate it. And we sure as heck have to nurture it.
Congressman
Well
Phillips,
said.
as you and our listeners know, a lot of Americans have bled and died for the right to vote. I mean, it's an inalienable right all of us have to vote. Unalienable. I can't say that. I'll just move on.
Yeah.
So I saw something that made me do a triple take. 62% of Americans say they expect the losing side in future presidential elections to react violently. The Attorney General says the Justice Department will do all it can with the powers it has, but called it essential for Congress to give the department the power it needs to guarantee that every eligible voter can cast a vote that counts. Every legal vote counts. I know you and your colleague Jason Crow have introduced a resolution to permanently designate today, January 6th, as Democracy Day. Can you talk about that and the right to vote in this country?
Yeah, and Paul, I have to, your comments remind me, of course, that my own father, Artie, gave his life in service to the country as a soldier in Vietnam to preserve and protect our rights, our freedoms, our liberties, our right to vote. And I partnered with Jason Crow, who himself is a veteran of the U.S. Army, to commemorate this day as Democracy Day. It is not, there's no other language attached to it, Paul. It's simply to commemorate a day that we should recognize how fragile this is. I think I'm one of millions, tens of millions in the country who grew up taking all of this for granted, that there were people in Washington, around the country, in our military, in our neighborhoods and communities, that above all else were committed to protect the foundations of what has created the most remarkable country in the world. And the erosion of that truth is one that I'm most cognizant of. And I think that a commemoration as simple as that is an important one, because too often we have important holidays in our country where people barbecue and get together with friends and family, but don't take even a few moments to recognize why it's being commemorated. And my hope is that we might be able to do so, and that in future generations and future members of Congress we'll take a moment of pause on January 6th to remember what almost happened. And when I say almost, we came awfully close for the first time in 240 years to having an interruption in our peaceful transfer of power. And that's a big deal. And I think it's worthy of commemoration. It is a fact. It is truth. And I want to make sure people know.
Dean, what happens next and what should happen next? We understand, of course, the January 6th committee is looking into this. What do you think will happen legally? Who will be held accountable, if anybody? How long do you think that this will take? What can we expect, and what would you like to see happen?
Well, there's the court of public opinion and voters' opinion, and of course there's the court of law. And Jordana, I have to say that, of course, it saddens me to see so many Americans who broke the law and entered the U.S. Capitol, stormed it, and they should be held accountable. And they are. I think 800 prosecutions underway right now. But that means that there are many colleagues here in Congress and a defeated former president in Florida who incited, inspired, enabled, and continue to propagate the very lie that inspired and misled these insurrectionists. The fact that they still walk free without consequence is deeply disappointing to most of us. And I'm not condemning all Republicans. There are many that share this sentiment very distinctly and recognize the consequences of their own silence. But they too, Jordana, are living in fear. They're fearful for their families. They're fearful for their own safety. They're fearful for an increasingly dangerous far-right movement that is fueled by lies and misinformation, particularly from the former president. And I'd like to think that it is the court of voter law, if you will, that will ultimately have the loudest voice here and start sending people to Congress with the character and the principles and the values that we should expect of those who serve in public office. I respect conservatism. I respect different opinions. We need them here. That's how we thrive. But we cannot have divergence of core principles and values, and that is what we're witnessing. And I'm afraid there's no law, there's no court that can address that. That's going to have to be done by each of us, should we care enough to do so.
Hey, Dean, last question, and thank you for hanging on with us. The Constitution's 14th Amendment gives Congress the power to disqualify anybody who held public office from running for office again if they participated in an insurrection or rebellion against the United States. That applies to congresspeople, it applies to senators, it even theoretically applies to former presidents. Do you believe that Donald Trump will have the opportunity to run again in 2024?
Paul, it's a question I'm struggling with right now. On two occasions, we impeached the now defeated former president. And on the second occasion, a number of Republicans joined that effort because they recognized what he had done. Many more recognized what he had done, but didn't have the political courage to address it with their vote. I have concerns about disqualifying him proactively from running again. As I said earlier, ultimately, I have belief in Americans that when presented with facts, presented with alternatives, that they will choose the right one in the long term. We all make mistakes. We're all human. But I don't know if it would be in the country's best interest to proactively disqualify him from running again. What I'd like to see is Americans open their hearts, their minds, and their heads to the reality and the consequences of inviting him back to a position of power. That's what I would like to do, and that's how I'm going to spend this year, the next number of months, and should I be reelected once again in my next term, to simply do my best to educate, inform, advise, and inspire Americans to participate. I think that's how democracy should work. I do not think it would be in the best interest at this point to disqualify him, not to mention the fact that we tried to do so already quite legitimately using our constitutional powers, and we failed because there was such a lack of courage in a place that always seems to favor self-preservation over principle.
Okay.
Very diplomatic and well said. Dean, before we let you go, are you healthy? Is the family okay? I mean, COVID is crazy, and are you okay?
Jordana, thanks for asking. I am well, thank you. I've avoided COVID so far, taken every precaution, following all the CDC guidance, and knock on wood, so far so good. It has affected some family members. It is affecting a remarkable number of my colleagues right now and staff members, and just reminding people that you can stay safe if you simply pay attention to guidance. That means wear a mask in close settings and get your shots and your booster, and simply do your best to keep yourself safe and others. And it's another opportunity for we Americans to come together and protect each other, because that's what patriotism really means.
Congressman Dean Phillips, appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you both, and keep the faith.
Thank you.
Yes, stay well, Dean. Thank you.